Hello, and welcome to the third video in our History of Religion series, Islam. This video is going to be quite comprehensive, so in order not to bore you, I decided to divide it into 2 episodes. In this episode, we will explore the little-known history of the religion that Prophet Muhammad introduced to the world. As always, we will approach the events in the distinctive style, looking from different perspectives and thinking outside the box. Our goal is to understand how the legacy of a prophet has been fragmented and how it has been altered by those in power for their own interests. Understanding these aspects is crucial, especially for those who identify as Muslims today, to see how they are being influenced and guided. As we approach the end of the 6th century CE, Muhammad, the son of Abdullah bin Abdul Muttalib, was born into a polytheistic region in Mecca. Muhammad lost his father before his birth and his mother shortly after, leading to his upbringing by his grandfather, Abdul Muttalib bin Hashim, and later, after his grandfather's death, by his uncle, Abu Talib. I won't delve deeply into the Prophet's life story here, but I want to focus on a period often referred to in some sources as the lost years. There are certain aspects of this story that don't seem logical to me. According to the narrative, it is said that Prophet Muhammad was an illiterate man. In my view, this claim likely serves to prove that Muhammad did not write the Quran himself. Frankly, this claim has always seemed absurd to me. This is a man who spent years as a merchant in Mecca, one of the trade and religious centers of that time. His grandfather was one of the most prominent figures in Mecca, and Muhammad himself was so respected that he was called Al-Amin, which means the trustworthy, by the people. It just doesn't make sense to say that this man was illiterate. After all, he led a revolution of sorts. The notion that this claim is made simply to refute the idea that Prophet Muhammad wrote the Quran himself is rather tragic. Prophet Muhammad would often go to Mount Nur and enter the cave of Hira, where he would stay for hours, sometimes even days. I'll continue my story by giving a few examples related to the Prophet's education. Some researchers suggest that before Muhammad became a prophet, especially after his marriage to Khadijah, he frequently conversed with her Christian relative, Waraqah bin Nawfal. Another example is a Christian monk named Bahira, whose religious and philosophical teachings are said to have had a profound impact on the young Muhammad. It's possible to expand the examples to include Prophet Muhammad's early education in poetry and literature with the Banu Sa'd tribe. However, my purpose in mentioning these is not to claim that Prophet Muhammad was educated and he wrote the Quran. I find engaging in that debate unnecessary because it's not something I believe in. In my opinion, the accusations in the Quran that say to the Prophet, "You were among the ignorant before," are written because the Prophet believed in the ignorance of the old religions. Therefore, I wanted to highlight what I believe and what some Islamic scholars also see as misinformation that has been spread for years without much thought. When Muhammad reached the age of 40, one night while he was in seclusion on Mount Nur, something extraordinary happened. Angel Gabriel appeared to him, and soon after, the first command, Iqra, was given. This part is crucial because, according to the stories passed down through generations, it's said that when Gabriel commanded Iqra, Muhammad replied, "But I cannot read." I find this to be an illogical command. After all, you're telling a person to read. What is he supposed to read? What have you given him to read? What are you asking him to read? There's a flaw in logic here. But we're talking about an angel, so there shouldn't be such a mistake. I also looked into the other meanings and etymological roots of Iqra. It turns out that Iqra doesn't just mean read. It also means to recite, proclaim, or deliver a message. Now this makes sense. Is it more logical to tell someone to read when there is no book yet? Or to tell them to deliver the message? Do you see what I'm saying? Once again, I say they have been conducting a perception operation for hundreds of years, trying to fit the narrative that Prophet Muhammad wrote the Quran. I'm talking about how even the first command was manipulated. When you see what this mindset has done to religion, you'll be shocked, to say the least. Muhammad began to preach the new religion in Mecca, facing chaos, immense difficulties, and eventually being forced to migrate to Medina. After years of battles and the eventual conquest of Mecca by the Muslims, the Prophet finally experienced a brief period of peace, only to pass away at a relatively young age. Although Muhammad endured a challenging life, had he known what would happen after his death, he would have been heartbroken and devastated. Muhammad passed away in 632 AD at the age of 62. It is estimated that the Muslim population at that time was around 30,000. However, if you were to ask, how many of them were truly devout Muslims? The answer is debatable. In fact, even within the Prophet's close circle, there were people whose faith was questionable. That's a bold statement, isn't it? But you will soon see for yourself how fragile human beings are, even when living alongside a prophet. There is a lot of misinformation in the Islamic world about Muhammad's death. This confusion also hints at how Islam would take shape after the Prophet's passing. It is said that Muhammad's body was left unburied for 3 days after his death. Imagine leaving a body in the Arabian heat for 3 days without burial, especially the body of the Prophet. There is a claim that his followers performed funeral prayers in small groups, entering the Prophet's house and praying next to his body, which is why it took 3 days. But this doesn't make sense either. Try leaving a body in the Arabian heat for 3 days and see if you can even approach it afterward. However, other claims are not as simple. After the victories in battles, especially the conquest of Mecca, Prophet Muhammad and those around him gained significant wealth and material power. How much of this wealth the Prophet took for himself and how he used it doesn't concern me. But my research suggests that it was his close circle, rather than the Prophet himself, who became wealthy. The disputes that arose in the period following the Prophet's death revealed that events were not as innocent as we might have thought. This also offers a more logical explanation as to why his body remained unburied for 3 days. Now, I will share this story from a different perspective. Get ready, because I'm certain that it will shake you. The topics I'm about to discuss continue to be debated within the Islamic world, particularly among various sects. Until we reach the section on Caliph Uthman, remember that what I'm about to recount involves uncertain matters. However, everything after Uthman is clear-cut and well-documented. Are you ready to be shocked? Prophet Muhammad was poisoned and killed by those closest to him. Certain hadiths mention incidents, such as the Prophet suddenly falling gravely ill again after seemingly recovering, or when he requested that all his family members drink the same medicine that had been given to him. These events can be seen as indications that power struggles had already begun, with the Prophet becoming increasingly defensive toward those around him. When the Prophet was on the verge of death, his father-in-law Abu Bakr left his side and returned to his home, which was a few hours away. Umar's refusal to allow Muhammad's body to be washed and buried by Ali is another matter that raises many questions. And don't forget that Abu Bakr was also the father of Aisha. I will address that topic later. Umar's actions after the Prophet's death, such as preventing people from approaching the body for 3 days by claiming that Muhammad had gone to meet with Allah and would return, and even threatening to kill anyone who approached the body, are truly puzzling. If anyone finds this logical, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. Abu Bakr's return from his home after 3 days, by which time the Prophet's body had naturally started to decompose in the heat, is another point worth pondering. Before his death, the Prophet had told those around him, "Write down what I will say, so that you do not fall into disagreement after my death." Umar vehemently opposed this request, stating that the only thing necessary for us is the Quran, and rejected the Prophet's wish, leading to arguments among those present. What makes this even more intriguing is that, according to hadith sources, after the Prophet's death, Umar became enraged, attacking people, until Abu Bakr calmed him down by reminding him of the Quranic verse, "The prophets are only human, and every soul shall taste death." Umar, who was considered almost a hafiz, that is one who has memorized the Quran, reportedly said to Abu Bakr, "I was not even aware of this verse until you recited it to me." The fact that even someone like Umar was unaware of certain verses is something that deserves reflection. This has led some researchers to speculate that Umar was trying to delay the burial process until Abu Bakr arrived, to ensure that Ali, who was both loved by the Prophet and the people, would not become the caliph. As mentioned in a hadith, it is said that after Abu Bakr's arrival, the Prophet was secretly buried during the night. Aisha is reported to have said, "We became aware of the burial of the Prophet on Wednesday night when we heard the sound of shovels." In another narration from Aisha, she says, "We did not know where the Messenger of Allah was buried, but when we heard the sound of shovels, we realized that he was being buried." Islamic historian al-Tabari takes these claims even further, stating that Umar and Abu Bakr were so preoccupied with securing the caliphate that they did not even attend the funeral. Some hadiths also describe Umar's intense ambition in this regard. For instance, after Ali refused to pledge allegiance to Abu Bakr as caliph, Umar and some companions stormed his house. According to some sources, Umar threatened to burn down the house while the Prophet's daughter Fatima was inside, and some accounts suggest that he even carried out the threat. It is said that Fatima's 6-month-old child was injured when she fell to the ground during the incident. The reasoning behind Umar's actions is often explained as an attempt to prevent the growth of a faction opposing Abu Bakr's caliphate, as this could have sown seeds of discord and division among the followers of Islam. If true, this was indeed a harsh course of action. I won't delve into the depths of the matter, so I'll leave the interpretation to you. My role here is to share information gathered from hadiths and open sources. How accurate or biased they are is for you to decide. It's important to reiterate that this video is about discussing the untold, controversial aspects of Islamic history. If I were to merely recount what you've been told for years, there would be no difference between my channel and other YouTube channels. The death of the Prophet shook the Islamic world, marking the beginning of what would be a chaotic period known as the era of the 4 caliphs, lasting about 30 years. The Prophet's father-in-law, Abu Bakr, served as caliph for 2 years before passing away at the age of 63, after which Umar took over. The period of Caliph Umar is also referred to as the era of the sword, as he was an extremely strict and determined person. During his rule, Islam expanded significantly through wars and conquests, including the conquest of Jerusalem. Under Umar's leadership, the Arab tribes that abandoned the religion after the Prophet's death were fought and annihilated. If any of you believe that Islam was truly spread through peace and love, you are far from the truth. Islam was clearly spread through wars and coercion. The ideology of "fight until religion is for Allah alone," as mentioned in Surah Al-Baqarah, was the driving force behind this expansion. This and other similar open-ended verses form the basis of all the religious and sectarian conflicts you see today. Indeed, a conversation between Umar and Abu Bakr reflects this mindset quite clearly. During Abu Bakr's caliphate, he ordered the destruction of tribes that did not pay zakat. In response, Umar said to Abu Bakr, "How can you fight those who say, 'La ilaha illallah'? It has been said that Muslims should not fight Muslims." However, following Abu Bakr's stance that a person who does not pay zakat cannot be considered a Muslim, the tribes were destroyed. I provided this example for those who claim Islam is a religion of peace and never supports war. We can multiply such examples countless times. If Buddhism, which is fundamentally a religion of peace, has been involved in numerous wars, it is impossible for Islam to remain uninvolved in conflict, given the messages in the Quran and the Torah. Especially when you read the Torah, you might feel like you're in the science fiction movie. Recall Surah Al-Ma'idah 68. According to this verse, if you do not believe in what is written in the Torah and the Gospel, You are not considered a Muslim. If it were otherwise, the verses would have clearly stated, the Torah's rulings are null. From now on, only follow the Quran, right? On the contrary, it says, the Quran came to confirm the previous scriptures. Returning to our topic, after the death of Caliph Umar in his war against the Sasanians, Caliph Uthman's rule begins, and in the sense you understand, Islam ends.